So we are reading Hands of Light by Barbara Brennan. We are on chapter 13, page number 113 of the book. But first we are going to look at figure 13.1. We are looking at the Cesoid personality. It's on 131 of the PDF. Yeah. So the Cesoid personality, if you look at it, the first row that is there. So when does it occur? It occurs before or at birth.
Cesoid.
Cesoid. So what is the trauma? That means that you have a hostile mother, right? So maybe when people have, they want to abort a child, or they're not happy with the child, or they have a very difficult pregnancy, they have financial difficulty, or they are being abused or something like that, then the mother can become hostile to the child. What is the pattern? You want to hold it together, right? And you use sexuality to feel the life force. You use sexuality to actually feel alive. Okay. The demands the right to be and to exist. So we want to feel that we are alive and we exist. And the complaint is constantly fear and anxiety. And negative intent is I will split. That means you kind of disassociate from yourself. So a disassociation can take place. And the devices behind the negative intent is unity versus splitting, right? So what are we looking for? When we are really looking for what we want in life, it is basically to find oneness. It is basically to find wholeness. But over here, there is always a conflict between becoming whole and splitting up. And the last is what needs to be done is you need to create boundaries. You have to have boundaries within yourself. Yes, Shimangla?
No, you have to make me a host. I can't this thing myself.
Bhaiya, I wanted to know what you mean by strengthen boundaries.
Strengthen boundaries means that you need to strengthen your boundaries. So let us say when we look at dynamics of interpersonal relationships, for example, right? Now, abroad, the boundaries are very big. You know, if you come too close to a person, they start getting upset. So you need to keep a distance of at least a foot. In India, the boundary is less, but then there are certain things you can say to certain people and certain things you can't say to some other people.
But Bhaiya, we're talking about a little child before he's born and before...
No. So this is later on. When we are figuring out what is the character that you're dealing with.
Okay.
So this is later on. That today to get out of this problem or this personality structure and become more coherent, you have to create boundaries for yourself. Okay.
Thank you.
Shimangla, move to the next chart. Okay, so Cesoid personality, the physical build is elongation, right and left, imbalance. So the person may be tilted. There are many people you'll find they walk around with a head tilted like this, or a body slightly off balance, right? So they are indicating that they are in this imbalance. Then the body tension is a ring. They're not coordinated. So you'll find people who are not very coordinated and have weak joints. The circulation in the body, the hands and feet are cold. Energy levels are hyperactive and underground, right? I don't know what this underground means over here, but they are hyperactive. So they're either very, very active or they are totally down, that kind of situation.
It's ungrounded.
Ungrounded. Sorry, ungrounded. Underground, I'm saying. Sorry, pardon me. Yeah, so either they are hyperactive or they are ungrounded. Energy location is they are frozen at the core. So they are not being able to have proper relationship because they are frozen. And the primary functional chakras are the 7th, 6th front, 3rd right front and 2nd right. And they are not they are asymmetrical. Okay. And then the psychodynamics of an open chakra is basically spiritual, mental, and the will. And genetic defense system is that withdraw, porcupine, and beside himself. So withdrawn means when you look at, one second, Shivangla has just gone. Let me pull it up. Just hang on. Okay, she's back. Yeah.
Bhaiya,
Uh,
what do you mean by psychodynamics of open chakras, spiritual, mental?
that means you are open at the spiritual level, you are open at the mental level and at the will level. Okay.
Okay.
What do you mean by open?
Open means they are functioning.
But on the up above there, you've said primary functioning chakras are asymmetrical.
Asymmetrical means that they're not, I mean, in the sense that they are moving ulta pulta. Na? When you see asymmetrical on your sheet,
Yeah.
okay, means that they are not symmetrical. Where will
And
that
seventh
be?
is the spiritual one. And
Seventh is
here it's saying
spiritual.
it's open. So isn't it
Contradicting itself.
itself?
It's not contradicting. It's saying that you'll operate at those levels.
Okay.
Oh.
Asymmetrical will mean that it is not going clockwise.
Okay.
Shivangla, you back?
Yes.
Okay, go to the next sheet. Yeah, so what does it evoke? Everything you will attempt to intellectualize it. Rather than feeling, you will start going into intellectual stuff, right? So if you saw the last sheet which was there, the psychodynamics of the open chakra is spiritual, mental, and will. There is no feeling over here. Okay. And then withdraw away into. So you are constantly withdrawing. So if you saw in the last sheet, what are the energetic defense systems? It was withdrawal. So they withdraw into themselves, not radiating any energy, or they become the porcupine. Like anyone touches them, they'll get a poke, right? Or they are besides themselves. So they withdraw away from and they communicate in absolutes. The language is depersonalized, and to exist means to die. So there's constant, I'm not worth it. I'm going to die. I'm going to live. I'm going to die. I don't want to do this. I want to do this. So there's a constant wishy-washiness in this person. The mass statement is, I reject you before you reject me. So they will, in anticipation that something is going to happen, they will do that same thing, which ultimately is not productive. The lower self statement is, you don't exist either. If I don't exist, then you also don't exist. And the higher statement is, I am real. Okay, so we'll go through all these charts once we go into the statements again.
Bhaiya, that means they are actually have a low esteem of themselves.
Correct. They are constantly, they're constantly doubting themselves, I would say.
Doubting themselves because they don't even like anybody to touch them because of that porcupine, that the moment somebody comes near them, they sort of react to it.
Yeah.
So they don't.
So they like you and then dislike you.
Uh-huh.
They'll hit you and then they'll love you. So there's a constant contradiction going on in this kind of a character.
Thank you.
So, a hostile mother who produces such a person?
What?
Be a hostile mother who can produce such a person, or otherwise also we have such people.
Can't hear you, auntie. Auntie, what were you saying? Your voice is not coming through.
No.
Your voice is not coming through.
Oh,
Come closer to your
Then
mic.
I'll have to come back again.
Come closer to your mic.
No, I have to
Yeah. So reboot. Sagri, you're saying something?
She said, is it a hostile mother who produces this kind of person?
Yeah, so one of the reasons is the hostile mother, right?
Yeah. She said,
The trauma, it's the trauma of the hostile mother.
Yeah.
So it's not that only the hostile mother will produce, but there's a trauma created by a hostile mother.
No, that's what she asked.
Okay. Shivangla, you can move on. Yeah.
The energy field, the energy field of the cesoid structure. The cesoid structure is characterized mainly by energy field discontinuities like imbalances and breaks. The main energy of the person is held deep within the core of the person and is usually frozen there until therapy and healing work is done to free it.
So what it says here, the energy field discontinuities like in imbalances and breaks, right? So they're constant breaks. There's no flow in the energy, right? So he'll go one side in one time and then go to other side at the other time. So you really don't know with this character what he's going to do, when he's going to do it.
Figure 13.4 shows the thin and breaking line of the etheric body of this structure with energy leaks at the joints. Its color is usually very light blue. The next layer and mental bodies are seen to be either tightly held and frozen at times, or at other times moving around randomly without a balanced energy between front and back, right and left.
Okay, so what we saw, the layers of the aura constantly moving. You know, in a person who is balanced, they will be constantly pulsating or radiating, etc. And they'll constantly being adjusting. In this kind of a character, many of the layers simply are static. They get frozen, right? They're not moving. They're not dynamic. So they're not adjusting to what is happening. They are literally stuck. Okay, and then there's also an imbalance between the front and the back and the side, etc., etc.
The field is usually brighter with more energy on one side and on the back of the head. The spiritual bodies of the cesoid are usually strong and bright with many brilliant colors on the sixth layer of the aura or celestial body. The oval form or etheric template layer is usually very bright in appearance with a color more of silver than gold. It usually has diffuse boundaries and is not fully inflated, with a narrowing of the egg shape at the feet, where there is sometimes weakness.
Yeah, go ahead.
The aura's imbalance, which is found primarily in the lower three bodies, extends to the chakras in the cesoid person who has not begun process work. Many chakras are counterclockwise. This means
So again, in this kind of a body, the problem is more in the lower levels, right? So the grounding, the connection with the earth, all that is generally missing.
This means that they send more energy out than they take in. The disturbed chakras correspond to qualities in the character structure that need transformation. Chakras that are clockwise open are usually asymmetrical, meaning that those chakras are also not functioning in a balanced manner, even though they are open.
So they will not be moving clockwise, right? They'll be moving in a parabolic kind of a movement, although they are still clockwise.
More energy will flow through one part of the chakra than another part. This imbalance is usually lateral. That is, there may be more energy flowing through the right side of the chakra than the left side. The person would therefore tend to be more active or possibly even more aggressive than receptive in the area of life governed by that chakra.
So again, we have micro chakras, right, which are again different frequencies. So if one side of the chakra is functioning more, again, it creates an imbalance in the nature of the person concerned.
This asymmetry has been described in chapter 10 in terms of active receptive splitting. A diagonal or elliptical figure measured by the pendulum indicates an asymmetrical chakra that appears to clairvoyant vision as shown in figure 13.4. The chakras that are usually open are the rear sexual center, second, the solar plexus, third, the forehead, sixth, and the crown, seventh. The sixth and
So now this is interesting, right? Now using the pendulum, which chakras are open? If we can make a chart, we can actually start understanding what is the nature and the character of a person and where that person is operating from, if we want to go into that kind of depth, right? So over here, she clearly says that if the rear sexual chakra, the solar plexus and the forehead and the crown are open, that means this person is of a Cesoid character.
the sixth and seventh centers are associated with mental and non-physical spirituality, to which the person is usually very oriented in his life. He also functions through will, second chakra. These chakra configurations are variable and change during a person's transformational work. As the individual opens more to being in the third dimension and living in the physical, more of the chakras open. Many times the rear sex center is not open in the beginning of the work.
So again, it is basically a thing of grounding, of connecting with nature, connecting with this earth life system that we are actually living in. Okay, this 3D reality that we are living in.
The lower part of figure 13.4 shows the relative degree of bright energy active in the brain area. The brightest, most active place in the occipital or rear area, and the least in the frontal area.
Okay, Shimangla, can you just take the picture up? Let's just see the pictures. Just roll it up, scroll it up, please.
Which figure do you want?
The next figure in the next page. Yeah, go down more. No, little bit, not page. इसके नीचे एक figure है. Yeah, so if you see this picture, the frontal lobe area, the energy is very low, right? So naturally, cognitive thinking starts getting affected here, and the projection is more at the energy is more projected at the back. Okay, so he's saying over here, many times the rear, okay, shows the relative degree of bright energy active in the area. The brightest and the most active place is the occipital lobe at the rear, and the least in the frontal area. This is where we are visualizing stuff. I mean, what we are seeing, right? Occipital lobe takes up all the visual data. You can go back, Chimangla.
The lower part of figure 13.4 shows the relative degree of bright energy active in the brain area. The brightest, most active place is the occipital or rear area, and the least is the frontal area. The second most active chakra is the third eye and third ventricle area of the brain, which are connected by a bridge of brightness between the two. Then come the side lobes, which are associated with language. There are large general areas of the brain that appear to have low activity. The low energy in the frontal area can be seen by the blank, gone look, often seen in Cesoid. He usually directs his energy up the spine and out the back of the head in the occipital region, creating the energy bulge towards the back of the head. This is a way of avoiding here and now contact in the physical plane. The energetic defense systems primarily used by the Cesoid are the porcupine, withdrawal, and being beside oneself, as described in chapter 12. Figure 12.3, of course, a person with any structure can use the various defenses at various times.
Okay. So all of us use all the defenses, but primarily these people, they use these three defenses, right? Now, it is also disassociation. So the person is not wanting to connect with people or have a fear of connecting with people. That's why they are focusing the energy to the rear side rather than to the frontal side where we actually make contact with people.
The higher self and life task of the Cesoid character. In the personal growth process, it is always important to be very honest with the self as to the self's shortcomings, to work on them, to transform them.
Okay, so what is most important? We need to always acknowledge where our shortcoming is, and we need to be honest with ourselves, right? Creating a facade and accepting the facade to be true creates a lot of problems for us. So we first and foremost, we have to start becoming true to ourselves.
But it is not healthy to dwell on the negativities of the self for very long. One must always balance the attention to these parts that need transforming with attention to finding the nature of the higher self, supporting it, enhancing it, and allowing it to come forth. After all, that is what transformation is all about, isn't it?
So over here, I think the grid can become a very powerful tool for us, because anything that puts us on the left side of the grid, right, is basically something that is a shortcoming in us. And if we can rehash it, reinvent it, put a strategy in place, use a tool to shift us from the left side to the right side, a lot of these things can automatically start getting transformed.
People who are or have some Cesoid character in their personality makeup are usually very spiritual people.
Okay, so why are they spiritual? Because the lower side, the grounding in reality is not very powerful, but the upper side and the higher layers of the aura are also open. They are stuck in the middle and they're disconnected at the bottom, but the higher layers, the level 6 and the level 7 are pretty active. So they tend to be spiritual people, and they're technically disconnected from 3D reality.
They have a deep sense of the profound purposes of life. Many times they seek to bring the spiritual reality into the mundane lives of those around them. They are very creative people with many talents and many creative ideas, who could be compared to a beautiful mansion with many rooms, each room tastefully and richly decorated in a different style, culture, or period. Each room is elegant in its own right because the Cesoid has had many lifetimes in which he has developed this wide range of talents, decorated rooms. The problem is that the rooms do not have doorways between each other. To get from one room to the other, the Cesoid must climb out a window and down a ladder and up another ladder and into the window of the next room. This is very inconvenient. The Cesoid needs to integrate his being to build doorways between the beautiful room so that he has easier access to all the parts of his being.
So again, so fragmented, right? He's not integrated. The guy is fragmented. So you are stuck on a particular idea. To shift to another idea takes a little bit of work and takes a little bit of time. And they're very creative because again, visualization, right? The occipital lobes are very active. So a lot of visualization and creativity can become the hallmark of this kind of a person.
In general, one might say that the personal task of the Cesoid character is related to facing his inner terror and rage, which blocks his ability to materialize his tremendous creativity. His terror and rage actually keep the parts of his person separate because he fears the powerful coming together of all his creative talents. His task is also related to materializing or making manifest his spirituality in the material world. This may be done through expressing the spiritual reality through his creativity, that is, writing, inventions, helping people, etc. These tasks are very individual and must not be generalized.
So again, the first thing that develops this character is that rage, being traumatized because of a traumatizing mother, right? The mother doesn't want you, the other stuff that happens with the mother. That is the core and the start of this kind of a personality. And because of that disconnection, you start connecting with a higher state of self. But to operate in this world, we have to also be grounded. Otherwise, we are operating in the air. So this person can go into daydreaming, having, blankness in the eye. Suddenly they are sitting with people and they'll blank out. So you have to be able to understand that you are blanking out. You have to control that blanking out. For example, if you're unnecessarily starting to daydream, right? Daydreaming is good, but provided you can control it in a nice manner, right? And naturally, there is a fear because they know when they are materializing something, they can materialize it, but they're disassociated from reality. So because of that, constant conflict starts to happen with these kind of people. Basically, they need to get a structure in place which will allow them to do what they would like to
do. The oral structure. The oral character is created when normal development is arrested during the oral stage of growth. The cause is abandonment. In childhood, he experienced the loss of his mother, either by death, illness, or withdrawal. The mother gave to the child, but not enough. Many times she pretended to give or gave in spite of herself.
Okay, so in the first character, you're talking about the first matrix as we talked about it in the in Magical Child, right? While the child is in the womb. Now the next matrix is the mother. So the oral structure character is based on the connection with the mother after being born. When that is traumatized, that area of life is traumatized, then this character starts to come into being.
The child compensated for the loss by becoming independent too early, many times by talking and walking very early. Thus, he becomes confused about receptivity and is afraid to ask for what he really needs because deep inside, he is sure it will not be given.
So again, because the first connection of the child in the second matrix is the mother, the child is totally dependent on the mother, right? It could include the father also, but more generally speaking on the mother. If the mother is not responding to the needs of the child, this creates a fear of abandonment, right? Now the child is crying and is hungry, but the mother is not going to breastfeed the child. Now the child starts feeling abandoned. The child feels that I will not get in life what I really want. So that's why nurturing by the mother of the child in this period, just after being born, maybe a year or so, becomes very, very important. In fact, Shamji Bhatnagar, when he talks about the micro chakras, by just checking your micro chakras, he can tell you whether your mother breastfed you or not, whether your mother allowed you to sleep with her or not, what was the nature of that period of your life. He can tell just by feeling the micro chakras, whether they are open or they are not open. So very interesting. We can integrate these two topics, the micro chakra and what she's talking over here.
His feelings of needing to be taken care of result in dependency, tendency to cling, grabbiness, and decreased aggressiveness. He compensates by independent behavior that collapses under stress. His receptivity then becomes a spiteful passivity, and aggression becomes greed.
So we've all seen children clinging to their mothers. They don't want to share anything, right? And they don't want to interact with anyone. They're constantly hiding behind parents. So maybe this is the nature of that person who is not adequately nurtured by the mother when they are growing up. Actually, we can see these things when children are, when you are around children and you see how the children are behaving.
The person with an oral structure is basically deprived, feels empty and hollow, and doesn't want to take responsibility. The body is undeveloped with long, thin, flaccid muscles and slumps in weakness. The person does not look adult and mature, has a cold, depressed chest and shallow breathing, and his eyes may suck your energy. Psychodynamically, the personality holds on and clings to others against the fear of being abandoned.
So this can be called also like that chippu nature, right? You don't want that person with you, but the person will constantly come at you. So this can also be, when we are looking at the control drama personality, this person can become the interrogator, right? To attach to you, but can also be disassociated. So can also have an aloof drama going on. Again, the two things are going hand in hand. The aloof and the interrogator, and the intimidator with the poor me, right? So over here, it's the aloof and the interrogator drama being played out.
He is not able to be alone and experiences an exaggerated need for the warmth and support of others. He tries to get it from the outside in order to compensate for the tremendous feeling of inner emptiness. He suppresses his intense feelings of longing and aggression. His rage over the abandonment is held in. Sexuality is used to get closeness and contact.
So again, because the mother did not nurture the child when the child was growing up, he is clingy and will use sexual intimacy to bring in that, to cover up that emptiness that he or she feels within himself or herself.
The oral person has experienced many disappointments in life, many rejections of his attempts to reach out. He thus becomes bitter and feels that whatever he gets is never enough. He cannot be satisfied because he is trying to satisfy an inner longing which he denies by compensating with something else.
So this becomes very important, right? So again, the mother has not supplied that closeness, that gentleness, that compassion, that love. So he is looking for it outside. Now, it's impossible to find that outside because that connection with the mother creates it inside, right? So this person automatically starts getting little dissatisfied and aggressive at times also. And because of that emptiness and the inability to connect at that level, the person can be constantly rejected because he becomes too clingy, right? A person like this person can become like a jealous character. Now you're having a relationship and you're constantly shak kar rahe hain, then again it becomes a problem.
On the personality level, he demands to be nurtured and fulfilled. In interacting with others, he will speak in indirect questions that evoke mothering from another. But this does not fill him because he is an adult, not a child.
So becomes very important. He's constantly looking for nurturing and support from other people.
His presenting complaint when entering therapy is passivity and fatigue. In working in therapy, the issue will be to find nourishment in his life. But to get his needs met, he believes he must risk abandonment by or pretends from another. Thus, his negative intent will be, I'll make you give it to me, or I won't need. This in turn creates the double bind. If I ask, it's not love. If I don't ask, I won't get it.
So this is a classic aloof kind of an attitude, right? So interrogation and aloof. I'm interrogating to get energy and I'm acting aloof to get energy. And then they are flip-flopping all the time.
To resolve this problem in therapy, he needs to find and own his needs and to learn to live his life in such a way that his needs get met. He needs to learn to stand on his own 2 feet.
So again, we say that we need to step out of the control drama. If he's not going to step out of his control drama, then he'll constantly get stuck in the loop. So we have to find that centeredness. We have to find that synergy, the equanimity within ourselves if we want to transcend these natures.
In the therapeutic process, the first layer of personality encountered will be the mask. It says, I don't need you, or I won't ask. After the work of digging deeper into the personality is done, the lower self or shadow self will say, take care of me. Then, when resolution begins, the higher self of the personality emerges to say, I'm satisfied and fulfilled.
Okay, so constantly there is a need, but I don't want the need. So asking for help again starts to become a problem for this kind of a person.
The energy field of the oral structure. The oral character, figure 13.5, tends to have a depleted field, which is calm and quiet. The main energy is located in the head. The etheric is held tightly near the skin and is also light blue in color. The emotional body is also held in with not much color and has a generally depleted quality. The mental body is bright and usually yellowish. The higher levels of the aura are not very bright. The outer egg form, 7th layer, is not entirely inflated, not bright, with a silvery golden glow, more to the silvery side and depleted around the feet area.
So again, the spiritual connection is missing in this person.
Process work. He will most likely have the crown and the forehead center open, which accounts for his mental and spiritual clarity. If he has done personal growth work, he may have his front sexual center open as well. Thus, he is interested in sex and has some sexual feelings. The configuration of activity in his energy field in the head is shown at the bottom of the page, figure 13.5. This shows that most of the energy is located in the frontal and side lobes of the brain, and the least energy at the rear in the occipital regions. Thus, the oral character is centered on intellectual and verbal activity and not on physical activity. The defense mechanisms primarily used by the oral are those of verbal denial, oral sucking, and possible verbal arrows used to get attention rather than to provoke rage. That is, unlike the way the verbal arrows are used by the person with a majoristic structure as stated in chapter 12.
So again, basically the interrogator, constantly wanting to ask questions to draw energy to oneself.
The life task and higher self of the oral structure. The oral character needs to learn trust in the abundance of the universe and reverse the process of grabbing.
So again, this becomes important, right? Because he was not nurtured by the mother, the person will constantly want to grab stuff. They don't want to share stuff.
He needs to give. He needs to give up the role of the victim and to acknowledge what he does get. He needs to face his fear of being alone, go deep into the void within and find it teeming with life. When he owns his own needs and stands on his own 2 feet, then he will be able to say, I have it, and allow the core energy to open up and flow. The inner landscape of an oral character is like a fine musical instrument, like a Stradivarius. He needs to finely tune his instrument and compose his own symphony. When he plays his unique melody in the symphony of life, he will be fulfilled.
So again, he needs to connect with that inner self, that deeper self, and find that connectedness within himself rather than look for it outside. Okay. And this all results from the fact that his mother did not connect with him after he was born. Basically, that's the issue that is troubling this guy.
When the higher self is released, the oral characters can make good use of his intelligence in creative work in the arts or sciences. He will be a natural teacher because he is very interested in so many things and can always connect what he knows with love direct from the heart.
So when they find their center, they can become teachers because, they're so creative. They're looking at a lot of stuff, but they're not being able to really connect. But when they start connecting, they can become really empathetic, I would say.
The displaced or psychopathic structure. In his early childhood, the person with a displaced structure experienced a covertly seductive parent of the opposite sex. The parent wanted something from the child. The psychopath was in a triangle with the parents and found it hard to get support from the parent of the same sex. He sided with the parent of the opposite sex, could not get what he needed, felt betrayed, and then compensated by manipulating that parent. His response to that situation was to try to control others any way he could. To do this, he must hold himself up and even lie if need be. He demands to be supported and encouraged. But in interacting with others, he will dictate direct manipulation like, you should, to evoke submission. This does not lead to support.
So now this is more like the intimidator character, right? That you're intimidating people to listen to you, to do as you say, to get them to toe your line.
In its negative aspect, the person with this structure has a tremendous drive for power and needs to dominate others. He has two ways of getting this control: by bullying and overpowering, or by undermining through seduction.
So again, you want the person to be connected to you. So again, it can come out of intimidation or also seduction. So again, both are the intimidator. The person gets intimidated by beauty or by through the seduction, or by like raw authority and raw power.
In its negative aspect, the person with this structure has a tremendous drive for power and needs to dominate others. He has two ways of getting this control: by bullying and overpowering, or by undermining through seduction. Many times his sexuality is hostile, with a lot of fantasy. He has invested in an ideal picture he has of himself and has strong feelings of superiority and contempt, which covers deep inferiority feelings.
So again, the intimidator character is normally insecure, right? He has deep inferiority complexes. So you'll have many people who will try to project themselves to be more than what they are, right? This is coming from this kind of a character.
His presenting complaint when entering therapy are feelings of defeat. He wants to win, but to be supported means to surrender, and that he believes means defeat.
So again, being the intimidator, it's very difficult for the person to ask for support.
Thus, his negative intent is, my will be done. This creates the double bind of, I have to be right or I die. To resolve this problem in therapy, he needs to learn to trust.
Right. So if I'm always wanting to be right, then it creates problems. I need to start trusting the other person's opinion also, that the other person may be right.
In the therapeutic process, the first layer of personality encountered will be the mask. It says, I'm right, you're wrong. After digging deeper into the personality, the lower self or shadow will say, I will control you. When resolution begins, the higher self of the personality emerges to say, I give in. The upper half of the body seems blown up, and there is a lack of flow between the upper and lower half of the body. His pelvis is undercharged, cold, and tightly held. There is severe tension in the shoulders, base of skull, and eyes. His legs are weak, and he is not grounded. The psychopathic structure holds up against fear of failure and defeat. He is torn between his dependency on people and his need to control them. He fears being controlled and used and is afraid to be put in the position of victim, which is totally humiliating to him. Sexuality is used in power play. Pleasure is secondary to his conquest. He tries not to express his needs by making others need him.
Right. So he's constantly drawing power and attention to himself by being the intimidator or being the figure of authority which makes people dependent on him.
The energy field of the psychopathic structure. The main energy is located in the upper half of the body. His energy level is first hyperactive and then collapses. The person with a displaced structure, figure 13.6, has a general field that is depleted at the bottom in all auric levels and energized at the top. Thus, the egg shape is distorted in this way also. The etheric decreases in fullness towards the feet and is generally of a darker blue color, and stronger tone than that of the cesoid and the oral. The emotional body also is fuller at the top. The mental body protrudes towards the front of the body more than towards the back, whereas the emotional body may appear to have a bulge at the will center located between the shoulder blades, which is usually greatly enlarged. The higher auric layers are also stronger and brighter on the upper half.
So again, the person is more active in the upper areas of the body system or the auric system.
The chakra configuration in a psychopathic structure generally shows open will centers at the shoulders and neck base, with the will centers between the shoulder blades extremely large and overused. Open frontal center and crown center, with most of the others closed, especially the feeling centers. The rear sexual center may be partially open. Thus, he functions primarily through mental and will energy. The energy activity in the brain is strong and bright in the frontal lobes. This energy activity decreases towards the back of the head and is very still and usually rather dark in the occipital region. This indicates the person is interested primarily in intellectual pursuits and not in body activity other than in a way that serves the active will. The intellect is also used to serve the will.
So it's mainly mental activity. The physical is naturally missing over here.
It is from these powerful frontal lobes that the psychopath sends out energy arches that reach towards another's head to hold him in the mental grasp type of defense. He also engages in some verbal denial. He may explode into a volcanic rage similar to that used in the hysterical defense system, but in a controlled, balanced energy form that does not contain that same kind of chaos.
So again, the idea is to send out these tentacles from the energy body, which hold the other person in their grip.
Let's stop here.
Just finish this.
The life task and higher self of the psychopathic character. The psychopath needs to find true surrender by gradually deflating and letting go of his upper half and his tendency to control others, and by giving in to his deeper being and sexual feeling. With this, he can satisfy his deep longing to be in reality, make contact with friends, and feel like a human being.
So letting go the thing that I want to be right all the time. Everyone must listen to me. I am the authority figure. You have to shift out of that particular nature.
The inner landscape of the psychopathic character is full of fantasy and adventures of honor. Here, those who win are the ones with the most truth and honesty. The world revolves around noble values, which are upheld through perseverance and valor. How he longs to bring this into the physical environment of his real world. He will someday. When his higher self energies are released, he is very honest and has a lot of integrity. His highly developed intellect can be put to use to solve disagreements by helping others find their truth. Through his honesty, he can lead others to their honesty. He is very good in managing complicated projects and has a big heart full of love.
So again, when we stop the domination, we stop playing the intimidator, the person can actually turn out to be very, very helpful because they have the capacity of authority, but which is toned down when the higher nature is activated. So they can become a huge support system for people around them. I think we can stop here.